We are government, but we're not that government. We're our government. We can decide what's a reasonable return, and $150 to go to flag is too much. So why don't we bring forward a reasonable, not federal.
That's
federal
55
is not
cents a
reasonable.
mile?
That's based on the IRS.
55 cents a mile.
Yeah, and bring that forward and see if we can't make a compromise. I'd rather do that than invest 35. I'd rather put 35,000 into streets than have a vehicle sit out there, because you're still going to have the same problem. What if one person's going to Flagstaff and the other needs to go to Phoenix?
Well, we've got 3 cars, and they're rarely available.
Maybe we'll look at our travel policy. I don't know. However, that's a note. The other, I'm going down the line, and I'll go back up to the top and work down. And some of these are small, some of these are a little bit big. There's a $10,000 line item here for rim trail improvements under the community economic development line item. We have a $60,000 line item in the parks operating budget. I think we can squeeze 10,000 of that into trails. So we could either reduce the 50 down to 50, or we can put the 10 in here.
Okay, I want to hear from Kim out here.
So that is intended to be offset with a grant.
Okay,
So
that's
we have
enough
to
said.
put the 10,000 in to spend it.
10,000 out.
Yep.
If we'd put these footnotes in there on that, I wouldn't have even brought that up. If there's some way for me to already know that
Yeah.
was part of a grant, I wouldn't waste our time. But that's okay. Thank you. I know the park construction's a big deal. I think the most important thing we have on the plate that's ready for construction is the parking lot and the walkway and lighting. Is that $980,000?
Yes, it is.
Oh, man. That little parking lot addition and a sidewalk is $983,000.
Government price.
Huh?
Government price.
I believe it.
So the parking lot expansion, and basically it's a reconstruction and expansion. So it's redoing the whole parking lot and expanding it, and the walkways is 863, and then 120 in that line item is for the amenities for the skate park.
Okay.
So the skate park is really 420, but we have 300. The numbers vary, but
Okay.
Okay, the
that's what
skate
that
park is in that 983.
amenities
lighting.
such as shade, water,
Yeah.
seating, lighting, that's 120,000 of that 900.
And that's basically been committed.
The skate park
Yeah.
has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anything that we're not spending in this fiscal year that was budgeted is, the rollover is included in next year's budget, so.
Okay. One other thing I have is on Grandview Knoll. We're going to receive and expend $50,000 from the county. The Canyon Club said, we don't need any money, we don't want any money.
So what about, so we're not going to take, I thought that the Canyon Club was also going to donate money to us.
The Canyon Club will pay the vendors directly.
So in other words, what he's
We're not
saying
going to
is
give the
that
city $50,000.
150 budgeted.
Okay, but how are we going, if the,
Here's how that could work.
I have agreed to be the
we have
fiscal
portions of
agent for the
project.
county.
I'm sorry.
I've agreed to be the fiscal agent for the county, you have too.
Right.
And so,
The county's obligated $50,000.
so that's going to have to go through city procurement.
Exactly. And there's components of the project that will be $50,000. What we anticipate is those components would be broken out, and the city would basically contract for those things on their own.
Okay, so just the 50,000 that the county is going to give us is what we should, so if that goes over, that project goes over in any way, do you want any money in there, or you
We're not
utilize
asking the
contingency?
city for money. The Canyon Club wants to build this park.
So
One of the-
how sure of you are you on those numbers that whatever the city project's going to be is going to bid is going to be 50,000?
It probably will exceed 50,000, and we'll have to basically figure out how we work out the difference.
But if I don't show it, I can't spend it.
But you're only going to get $50,000. The intent was not for the city to spend money on Grandview Knoll.
Okay.
The intent was, one of the partners of the Glen Canyon Friends of Lake Powell went to the county and secured $50,000.
Yeah, I went too. I understand that. Here's my dilemma, Dugan. If we bid something, I don't know what it is that we're going to be asked to bid, but we're going to bid something. If it doesn't come in at 50,000 or under, then what?
The Canyon Club's gonna top off the,
But if they give us money so I can pay the vendor, I have to account for it.
oh,
Well,
Are you saying that the Canyon Club will pay anything over $150,000 to the vendor?
yes.
Over 50, he's saying.
Over 50.
50,000, excuse me.
That's what I'm understanding.
We can work that out. I mean, we would have a not to exceed, and then they would have a separate agreement for the difference
Okay.
with the vendor. I mean, we just probably need 2 agreements, but I think it could be done.
Well, you get the big bucks.
Well, I was certainly hoping to put a dent in the $983,000 park improvement project, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen.
If it's redoing the parking lot, it's probably same as 10th Avenue, it's probably over-engineered by double what it should be. You have to look at that.
Well, my thought initially was there's money in the operating side to do the design, and perhaps I was thinking that the parking lot improvements was more about half of this, and that we could push the other half, because I know what happens in the pace of government is we do the design one year and it takes the next year to get it built. So,
Design is being done this year.
right, that's in the operating side of the budget, the expense side of the budget.
Well, so then the design for John C. Powell Memorial Park, we've got 50,000 in this budget right here.
That's for the next phase.
Next phase, okay.
Well, there's also design money in your operating expense side, under contracted services. Yeah, you have.
Not for John C. Page.
Huh?
No. We've got it in community development, planning, and public works for different projects throughout, but not for the,
Contracted services, you're right. There's $170,000 in for Block 17.
17.
Right, okay, and then 30,000 for the Para Club. So that's, I guess, all I have for capital, unless, I mean, you guys can, I'm done with capital.
so what I've written down is to remove the general services vehicle and put Grandview Knoll down to 50,000. Is that correct?
That's what I suggest.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know how we can afford everything we've got. I don't want to take money out of streets, but, you know, the 1.7, whatever we're going to put in Horseshoe Bend, that's a big hit.
It is. But it's going to,
Can we do both in 1 year? You know, can we do, I mean, we've obligated for 10th Street.
Well, one of those projects will start returning revenue.
That's correct. And I'm wondering here, if we can't afford this, we've got 1.5 million in, we've got 1.6 for 10th Street, which we've got the design, we're ready to go to bid. We've got another 1.5 million. Is that real? Can we do it? Can we do a $3 million road job and a $1.6 million, $1.7 million Horseshoe Bend? Or are we trading the 1.5 million in streets for Horseshoe Bend this year until we can get some revenue coming in from Horseshoe Bend to accelerate our streets?
That's not going to work because we've already dedicated those funds from revenues from Horseshoe Bend are not going to be used for capital project outside of that area. So
But
you can't put that back into a revenue.
But I just cleared this up with the attorney. If we expend funds in this fiscal year for Horseshoe Bend and prior years, we've expended, we're expending money since 2016. in sanitation and all of those things. Those are accrued debt that can be captured from the fee structure of Horseshoe Bend. So, it's a shell game. We spent $1.6 million out of our general fund capital project fund this year. We get $2 million back from our revenues. We can now take that money and use it for what we would have used it.
Recapture money can
be used
for anything.
Outside of the proposed,
Horseshoe Bend.
okay.
Because it's been spent.
Yeah.
So there
I got
should be a
that.
ledger on all the money that's gone invested into Horseshoe Bend, and that ledger equals how much recapture we have.
I got that.
We've already spent the money, so we get to use that money.
Okay, I got you.
So
Just so you know, we are not transferring money into HERF, but we are transferring out 3.4 million for those road projects.
It's all HERF money?
Well, 3.4 million of it is.
yeah, and we're
HERF money can't be spent anywhere except for on the street.
yeah, and I don't have any problem draining her funds. I mean, so you're saying that we can't take that 1.5 because it's coming out of the HERF fund?
Right?
Well, you can save it in there.
Yeah, no, I don't think we need to save money in HERF. We need to put it in streets.
That's time.
So we're back to the dilemma of, can we afford the capital projects within the general fund, Fund 10? And we're transferring out $1.5 million?
Yes.
I'm not seeing where, it's gonna hurt that reserve a bit, but I think that we've budgeted low on our revenues from taxes. So I think that, we're gonna have that money there, whether or not we're gonna spend it this year, but we should have that money there, should we need it afterwards.
Yeah. No, the big one I had was to get it out of the park, the second phase of the park, thinking that the parking lot was half of what it is, but it is what it is. I mean, and so. But I do want to cut about almost $500,000 out of your general fund expenses.
Okay.
Okay, before we move on to general fund, anyone else want to talk about capital projects?
No, I just, Crystal, on your budget preparation here, so you've gone to all the departments and I mean, you've done all that footwork already, or are there still any outstanding communications or needs that haven't been addressed before we go on projects?
Yeah, there's of course there's lots, but
But there's none you don't anticipate, or you feel comfortable saying, and I know it's a preliminary at this point, but.
the two things that came up for me is perhaps an increase in the airport directors. Right now, we've budgeted a 10-hour week, right? 10-hour week. That may need to go to half-time, that we have not budgeted. And then the new city manager may wish to have an administrative assistant. I traded the administrative assistant for another position, so
Okay.
those
All
are the
right.
two things that I could see.
Yeah, I just want to, so if they come up, but we're not blindsided and we're like, hey,
Yeah, why didn't
we
you
were
talk-
thinking
yeah.
of- Okay. All right, we can move on to expenses.
I kind of,
I want to mention something about, about that parking lot. We really need to look at that parking lot because I'm thinking if they're designing, it must be designed along that street line. We did what, 130 some odd spaces down at the Hampton and plus the driveways and stuff. Parking lot, it's got to be, and we did it for about a fourth of what they're talking about doing that over there. We need to see what they're doing over there. If they're doing that same 4 inches asphalt and all that stuff, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, I can't fathom almost $1 million in rehabbing a 30-stall parking lot.
somewhere in this building, we've got those plans, right?
It's not a rehab, it is a rehab and expansion, so they have to tear it out,
Reconstruction, a total reconstruction.
construction, and lighting,
So it's not.
lighting, a sidewalk,
Maybe we can
curb. I mean, there was,
take a look at the design.
All the sidewalks, it's all the sidewalks and the lighting and the electrical for the access ways in the,
No, I understand, but I also understand that $1 million is just a heck of a lot of money.
860.
We have $983. Oh, in the skate park. Okay, sorry, you're right. Yeah, 160.
All right, we'll look at it.
850 is still a lot of money too.
All right. All right, we're done with capital, and we're going to general. Levi, anything?
On expenses?
Pardon?
On expenses now?
Yes.
I'll let Dugan lead off on that one.
Okay. I've identified roughly $450,000, and I don't want to pick this apart because I don't want to be the one. I just think that I've identified areas where I believe that when you look at historical spending, and I guess maybe we can use some examples. Let's say, for instance, I'll just pick a random one here.
Give us an idea where you're at, so we can catch up.
I'm getting myself organized here. And I don't want to pick on one department, okay, because this is for the most part, I think the budget seems to fall in line with historical spending. My question would be, when the department heads are presented with their budget, Crystal, are they presented with the same format that we have, where you have 2 prior years of actual?
yes.
And then, okay. So what stands out to me is when I see historically where there's a $20,000 expenditure and then we're going to go to 39.5.
Okay, so give me an example so we can tell you why.
Well, you gave me the justification and I saw why.
Okay,
And I would say, sorry, we got to go back. And maybe it doesn't work. So for instance, in travel, meals, and schools for Department 421 Patrol, Chief doesn't like this, but you know, historically we're at 20,000 and now we're at 39.5, and I did read the justification, and I understand there's a need, but also understand we have doubled our budget in less than 2 years.
Yes.
Doubled. We said we were going to be the fiscal responsibly council, right? We were elected to save a sinking ship, and so to a great extent we have. But what I see on the horizon, sort of a dark cloud out there, and I'm thinking it's time to batten down the hatches, and it looks to me like we're opening up the rum locker.
Well, I may,
We're acting like a bunch of drunken sailors here and thinking we can do it all and
I
keep
could
growing.
agree with that if it's in general fund and not capital.
I'm talking general fund.
Okay.
Aside from capital, we've doubled.
Okay.
You know, we've expended a lot more money, a few $1 million in personnel costs. Our burden has continued to go up. Our medical insurance has gone up almost 4%. Industrial percent is almost 30% higher. So when we increase salaries, we increase all of those other costs. And there's only so much we can do. If we want to keep building our streets and when we keep building new parks, we're going to have to understand that we can't just keep adding more people, because that takes away from the ability to do what we want to do in capital. And so we may have to cut back on some of the requests from some of the departments in order to accomplish what we have set out to do, and that is to improve our community. So, for instance, I see about $20,000 we can pull out of Department 421 Patrol. I see about $17,000 we can pull out of Fire Department 427.
What line item
Yeah.
within patrol?
Under 421 would be line item 2700 and line item 2705. Those two.
So how much?
25,000 from 2,700 and 5,000 from 2,705. Brings them back to 2-year historical averages.
Okay, just so you know, with the PD patrol, when we hire them and send them for training, the lodging is no longer covered. The lodging used to be covered, and now it's no longer covered. So if we cut 25,000 from that, then it's just gonna, when we hire a new patrol officer, if he has to be sent for, how many months of training do they go for? 16 weeks. And it's about what, 15 to 25 per person? How much is it per, what is lodging per trainee?
It's about $15,000 per recruit. What happened is APOS came back and took that funding from us. As a result, that had a big impact in our budget. Not only do we have to pay now for the lodging, we have to also pay for his food. It used to be covered and APOS will reimburse you, but one of the cuts that they did is that now we have to pay that approximately $15,000 per recruit, and that had a big impact in our budget as well. And it impacted everybody. When I talked to the sheriff, he said that he basically had to cut down in regards to hiring people because he sends like 5 at a time, so he's got to pay the same as we do as well. And that has a ripple effect on our
Yeah.
budget.
So I'm just concerned that, I mean, if we cut that budget by 25,000 here, then when he does hire a new patrol officer, that money's got to come from somewhere. So then it's probably going to come from contingency. So, just so you're aware.
Well, the easy thing for me to do is just say, city manager, cut $450,000 out of your Fund 10.
Okay, I can do
I
that.
don't have to get involved. I mean, I figured out ways that I would do it, but I'm not the manager. I'm the policymaker. So my policy would be cut $450,000 out of your expenses. It's grown. It's not like we haven't. So if you look back historically, we're in the 16 to 19 million dollar range.
If you asked me to cut 450,000, the first thing I would do is cut the 7.9 FTEs that you just approved. So I don't know that you really want me to make these decisions, but I will make a recommendation.
Okay, that's what I would like to see. I mean, guys, this is all great, but it comes down to living within what we have to live with. Otherwise, we're no different than, we've got to at some point, I love the idea that we're getting things done in capital. I really do. And I'm willing to pull out reserves to get a street done or an extra parking lot or a park. I'm great on that. What I'm really apprehensive about is moving our general fund from 13 million to 29 million.
But a lot of that stuff that we used to show in capital is now being shown in operating. For instance, the planning for the streetscape and Block 17 and the general fund, the general fund update and.
Well, I'm glad you.
General plan update.
Well, I'm glad you bring that up because those are things that I think I can help you with. Because back to affordability, in the 447 department, which is Community Economic Development, we have $290,000 in contract services. Okay.
Yep.
All right. We have $75,000 for land. We have $15,000 for engineering services. By the way, I see that $15,000 engineering services in multiple places. So it might be. It seems like we've got redundance. Public Works has got money.
Because it depends on the project where it's. So depending if it's a let's say stormwater project, or if it's a parking lot, then it's coming from Public Works.
Okay.
If it's site plan review, it's coming from planning and zoning. If it's,
I guess my question is, we have a group coming to Page in October, and during October, November, they're going to be doing study on Block 17. We're going to be getting sort of a general map of kind of what we think. We've got $170,000 in here for the Block 17 design. is it really going to be ready for that? I mean, if we've got these people coming in to do the study in October, that's 2019 budget. Are we really going to be able to do this 170,000 in that same fiscal year? Or would, you know,
Well, the two-pronged approach for the Block 17 is, Phase 1 is sort of pre-planning. We want an opportunity to have the Community Planning Assistance Team through the American Planning Association assemble a group of experts to come to Page and help us
170 he's talking about.
figure out an approach
290.
to getting, do some visioning and buy-in
Services.
and bringing stakeholders to the table
Block 17, yeah.
so that when we actually start doing the more formal planning process, we've already talked to the public, the people that are involved that'll be affected by it. So it's sort of a pre-planning process.
so Kim, that's my point. That's happening this October, November.
Right, this,
And so we then will have a pretty good idea what we have got a consensus from the ownership, we got a consensus from the community on what we think we like to do. The 170,000 in this line item is to go design those things
Well,
that we've
no.
come up with.
no, we're not, well,
Well, then,
it's pre-planning so that one of the things we want to avoid is when the last streetscape project was done, the city brought forth some examples or some preliminary layouts, and my understanding was that there was quite a bit of concern by affected property owners and the public that all the work had been done, they really didn't want public input. I don't want that for this project. This is a vital project for our urban core. We have to get buy-in and participation from the people who are directly affected, and so that's why we're doing this pre-planning process. That'll cost us less than $10,000 to bring in experts from around the country that this is what they do. Then, once we have sort of a vision, because if you remember, we had some initial meetings with a work group of Community Development Advisory Board staff and council members. We just kept going in circles. We couldn't even come together on what we as an internal group kind of wanted to do. This group will help the council focus their thoughts and things, and it'll bring the most directly affected stakeholders into it so that we can say, yeah, okay, we want to go in this direction, and, these are some of the things we want to accomplish. And then we can go and start a formal planning process where we do some design.
let me interrupt you. I know, and don't sell me, I've been sold on it. That's a great approach. What I'm saying is, the second phase of that is the $170,000 to go hire an architect to do the design, which is in this year's budget, which probably likely doesn't need to be in this year's budget, needs to be in next year's budget. Because by the time you get in November and you're just getting done with that survey, then you're in December, January, you're starting to work on next year's budget already. So to think we're going to be able to do both in one fiscal year, it ain't going to happen. So I'm saying take the 170 out of this year's budget, put it in next year's budget.
2019's budget and put it
Take
in
it out
20?
Take it out of 19 and put it in 20.
Is that,
Because you're not going to get it done anyway. I just know you won't, because we did the same thing with the skate park. We thought we'd have that done a year earlier than it actually took. So that's, and then the second part of
I
that
have a
is,
problem with that.
Dugan, is that part of the 290?
yes, it's 170,000 of the 290.
Yep,
Okay.
in planning
And then
and
there's
zoning.
another, what Crystal was going to bring up, there's another 30,000 in there for Parrot Club design concept. Do we want to bite that bullet?
Well, I think,
That's the swimming pool
well,
design.
I think
Right.
that may need to be there, because in order for us, we have to make a presentation to them as to how we would use that.
Okay.
So I think we got to have something that's looking pretty good. I don't know if it'll cost that much, but I think it needs to be professionally prepared.
Then the other two big ticket items I have, other than the nickel dime
Gonna come out here, aquatic
patrol and your stuff.
Radios. Didn't we
Is-
just buy radios?
We're always buying radios.
I know, but didn't we just buy radios?
Yeah.
Repeated. 64,000 in radios again. In police and fire.
Okay.
Keeping in mind that we haven't purchased the entire amount of radios that we wanted, because they're pretty expensive, so we kind of spread them out.
Where's that?
And if you recall specifically, I mentioned this, the radios that we replaced were 12 years old. So what we're trying to do, we're trying to get radios for all of our patrol officers.
I think it was,
It tends to be a continuation, but what we're doing is we're being very frugal in regards to buying stuff. Otherwise, it would have a big impact in our budget as well.
Linda can tell
I thought
you.
you bought them for everybody. I didn't know we only bought half of them.
Yes.
Thank you.
The last two items I have, we're going to have a discussion on the agenda, and that's the museum funding and the chamber funding. So those are the two items I have to discuss further on the budget.
Okay. Mike had a question about
The
possible funding for the,
aquatics.
Oh, yeah, I had that
Oh,
down
the
too. and
aquatic
I-
study.
That's $75,000. I think,
Should be
again,
pushed, I think we should push that off to a
I do
year.
too.
So I think there's 75 you can take off your expenditures.
Okay, so what I've heard is move the planning for the streetscape, the 170,000 and block 17 to the following year. $75,000 aquatic study move to the following year. Keep para or get rid of para?
no, I think, I think keep her.
Okay.
Potential, yeah, it's a
And then,
potential.
and then
gain.
we're going to have a discussion about the museum funding and the chamber funding, which
So
is
do you
off.
want me to
Then
come
there
up with
was also-
$200,000 in cuts?
See,
Does
we've
the
already
council-
given you half of what I asked for.
No, then it was,
Yes, you did.
You can make
oh,
recommendations.
Crystal, the other was Grandview Knoll down to 50,000.
Oh, yes.
Okay,
That's out of capital.
all right.
That's capital,
But I
yeah.
asked for $450,000 cut on general expenses, and we've given her 200 plus.
I do have a quick question.
So shouldn't be,
Levi,
I saw like cell phones scattered throughout the budget. Is there a way to see the total number that we're spending on cell phones?
Yeah, we can add that up for you. It's just, we have it per,
Yes, like in each department.
Department, yeah.
So I was just wondering if we could see the total.
yep.
'Cause I'd almost like to see more of like a half reimbursement to the employee instead of a whole cell phone.
So what happens is, the city employee either receives a city, if it's necessary, not everyone has it. So like for me, I carry a city cell phone, the city pays 100% of it, $66 a month. If I had chose to use my personal cell phone, there are some issues with that, but then they get a stipend of up to $55, not everyone gets the same, up to $55 a month, so about half.
Yeah, I was just trying to see what the total was because I know it's in every different department. So
Yeah, but not all employees, only those that we require
Yeah.
to respond 24 hours a day.
all right.
Do-